From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris with you on this Tuesday. Hope you'll join in the conversation this morning, talking about something, a certain aspect of an issue that we've covered repeatedly in the news, and unfortunately it seems to be getting worse as opposed to better, and that is the whole idea of opioid abuse, opioid addiction. We see the stories right now of the fatal overdoses happening as they relate primarily, when we hear about it in some of the big stories we've done in adults and younger folks, but then don't forget the fact that a lot of times infants are also born, if their mothers have been using, they can be born addicted to the drug, going through withdrawals from the drug, and the effects that has on potentially a whole generation of younger, people that are born with this, and then how they deal with it as they get older in life, what kind of effects opioid abuse has. We're going to get into all that this morning. Take some of your phone calls, 737-7587, and see, I don't know. As far as solutions to all this, they keep working it. As I say, I think the problem is getting worse as opposed to getting better. And the important thing is we get more and better research along the way. And to talk about that this morning, well, where else do we go? Let's go to Vanderbilt. What do you say? We've got Dr. Stephen Patrick on with us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Patrick.
Great to be here.
A neonatologist.
I am.
And you are, that means, well, pediatrician, assistant professor of pediatrics and health policy. And as neonatologist, you basically handle the very smallest of little people, right?
We take care of small babies and babies with birth defects.
Okay, so I was looking at some of the numbers out here and the like, and I'm sure you can quote me more of them, but in the United States, think about this, everyone. 1 infant is born each hour with drug withdrawal. Each hour, 1 infant, nationwide. Here in, so you see Middle Tennessee, you see from around the state into Vanderbilt. What kind of numbers do you see there? For Tennessee, if you have a sense.
Yeah, for Tennessee, we know that there's around 1,000 babies each year that are born having drug withdrawal from opioids throughout the state.
All right, so opioid, and by the way, just so we can clarify, opioids, we know, but does it differ in the infants you see whether or not the mother was using heroin or Oxycontin or oxycodone, or is the effect pretty much the same?
Well, opioids are a broad class, and you're right. They can include things like Vicodin, they can include heroin, but they can also include drugs for moms with opioid use disorder or somebody who has an addiction, drugs like methadone or buprenorphine.
Okay.
Any opioid can cause withdrawal in a baby. And so for us, at the end, what we need to know is that there's been an exposure during pregnancy so that we can monitor and take care of the baby. All
right, so now, usually, if some of these women who are using get prenatal care, is that when you can become, they don't always offer up, hey, I've been using opioids, right? Someone come in and you see them. What are you looking for? And again, we should clarify here, opioid abusers run the gamut from all socioeconomic scale, all racial profiles, everything. So you can't just do, put your thumb on one group. So how do you know?
Well, it's the importance of universal screening, and so building a relationship between an obstetrician and their patient so that they go through a standardized screening tool.
What do you mean, a urine test?
Well, it's better if you have a conversation and use a validated screening tool. A urine test captures a small window of time so that if you go through and you talk to someone, every person, have you been using through a standardized score, that they can identify somebody during pregnancy.
All right, so let's just assume I'm one of these mothers coming in and can you give me an idea of some of the questions? We sit down and, first of all, why am I there to see you? I'm coming in for prenatal care, is that it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I'm coming in for prenatal care, and I'm not sharing with you the fact that I'm popping pills every day. All right, so you see me, you can't tell by looking at me. I seem to be pretty lucid. So what kind of questions do you ask? Go ahead and...
Well, commonly when I see moms, and again, I'm a neonatologist, so I take care of babies after they're born.
The fact. All right.
But still, what I typically do is, like we ask all moms, have you used any illegal substances during pregnancy? Do you smoke? Do you use alcohol?
Okay, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that to you, so I'm going to deny it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think that's in part why there are validated screening tools. There are things called CRAFT and other things like that, where over and over again, these are things obstetricians use to go through and screen pregnant women. You're right that there's stigma around substance use. It is true that other things make it less likely that people are going to be forthcoming about drug use, and so that's in part why it's important that we talk about substance use, we talk about addiction, so that we can begin to push down some of the stigma and that people seek help. Because we know, for example, that for women who have an addiction, an opioid addiction in pregnancy or opioid use disorder, if they get treatment, if they start a medication like buprenorphine or methadone, that decreases their risk of overdose, of relapse, of some infectious diseases like hepatitis C and HIV, and it improves the chance that baby will go to term and have higher birth weights.
Okay, I would imagine the vast majority, if not absolutely all of these women, don't like the idea of the child they're carrying becoming addicted to these drugs. They just can't help themselves, correct?
Well, we know today what we didn't know 20 years ago about addiction as a brain disease.
Yeah.
It does change the biochemistry of the brain, and that's really important. You know, it's important as we think through addiction as a chronic relapsing medical condition, not a moral failing, and that's a big shift for a lot of us to think through. It's certainly not how I was trained necessarily in medical school even.
Yeah.
It's as we're learning more and more along the way. I shouldn't treat an infant that has drug withdrawal any different than I treat an infant who has any other condition, like a mom with diabetes that's uncontrolled. You know, why would I approach this any differently when I take care of the infant?
It's interesting because it's that mindset and accepting. You get so mad when you see these cases, and there have been some controversial cases that have been challenged where birth mothers have been prosecuted criminally for giving birth to a child born with these. Now, I'm not asking you to be political or anything one way or the other, whether you agree, but I would think laws like that on the books, while they think they're sending a message, if it's it's not going to change the behavior, and it might even, knowing a law's out there, further deter these women from seeking help because they don't want to get caught. Right?
That's absolutely right.
Okay. I mean, you know, what do you think?
Well, we had a law in Tennessee that a woman could be charged with a misdemeanor if she used an illicit drug during pregnancy, and many in the medical community were worried about that because, you know, at least anecdotally, we heard of women not seeking care, avoiding a hospital. And again, when we think through how to approach this from a large public health perspective, we need to improve that relationship. Just as our conversation about talking through drug use, that's already a hard conversation. When you put additional barriers around it, it becomes complicated.
Yeah.
And that's not good for mom or baby. For me to be able to identify a baby that's going to have drug withdrawal, I need to know there's been an exposure. If there hasn't been, for babies who have drug withdrawal, that may not start until day of life 3, day of life 4. That could be after the baby goes home.
Okay.
So it's important that I know that there's been an exposure so that I can monitor the baby to see if the baby's going to develop drug withdrawal. I'm
just wondering too, you're dealing with mother and baby, just as they meet, if there is one, what role does the father play in any of this? Do you deal with them at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. This is about family-centered care, and I would say one of the things that we're doing at Vanderbilt and in many parts of the modeling what they've done in many other parts of the country, we're trying to keep families together.
Sure.
We know that traditionally care for babies who have drug withdrawal, baby goes to a neonatal intensive care unit, separates the mom and the baby. What we're trying to do now is keep mom and baby together. Babies that have drug withdrawal, they are a colicky baby times 5, as we talked about before.
Yeah.
They're more likely to have breathing problems, some feeding problems. They can have their increased tone and they don't sleep very well at night, but they aren't critically ill generally. They don't require breathing tubes or machines or things like that, like many of the babies that I care for. So if we can keep families together, we can promote bonding at the very beginning part of life. What appears to us, we've seen a decrease in how long babies stay in the hospital when we keep families together in the hospital, and that appears to be an important treatment for the baby.
And we're going to take some calls if you want to join in, 737-7587. We have to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk more about that approach. And as you said, they're not often critically ill from this when they're born with it, but I'm wondering if there's ever permanent damage that comes out of this. We hear about learning disabilities in some cases, in other cases not. Brain damage, yes, no. We'll get into that, and we'll get into more about, frankly, too, something to pay attention is the cost of all this as well. So it's expensive to address it. We'll be back. More with our guest after this. If you want to join in the conversation, give us a call. We'll be back right after this.
Life